Kannan, welcome back. We have been discussing about Trump, world order, Iran, and once a destruction takes place, it is not a continuous process like the astrology is saying, elder necessary, that 7.5 years of trouble.
Saturn.
So, any destruction will come to an end. Once the destruction comes to an end, construction has to start. So, when the construction starts, only the friendly nations will start doing the reconstruction work by funding or by even grants. India is a good friend of Iran, very good friend of Iran. So, how will India gain once the construction and reconstruction starts? I am talking gain means that is good for Iran also, Iranian people and Indian economy too. What is be your view on that?
You're absolutely right that friendly nations will come to the aid of a
Maybe
battered
in their
country.
heart, we are the most preferred nation also of
Everybody
the
will.
Iranians.
No. For reconstruction to begin, there must be peace. So that country should agree to the terms of the reconstruction. So after the Second World War, when the Japanese were bombed and when the Germans were decimated, the Americans rebuilt Germany through a fund called the Marshall Fund.
Oh,
Okay, they rebuilt it, and today's Germany.
the regrowth
Yes.
of German economy is because of the
After the Second World War is because of
Western countries.
American
American.
money. Marshall Fund. The person who thought about it and then who so his name is
Marshall.
given to the fund. And
Okay.
similarly, for Japan, the Americans there was no fund as such with such a name, but the Americans gave nearly $7.5 billion over several years in the 1940s. So several billions is equal to several trillions today.
So they destroyed, they gave the money.
They didn't want to destroy it. To be fair to the Americans, they went into the First World War and the Second World War belatedly.
Because they were dragged into it.
Correct. They took an isolationist stand. Yes. They didn't want to be part
accept.
of this. Yeah. So
Correct.
So later they had become the one of the two superpowers. So they had the money, they had the wherewithal, and then I'm sure that they also benefited from this by, I should read more to find out the benefits that accrued to the Americans. The two things that accrued to the Americans was, firstly, Japan and Germany became very friendly states to the Americans, firstly. Secondly, I'm sure these the fund and then the funding created a number of jobs for also Americans. They must have been American advisors. They must have been American engineering firms, reconstruction firms, steel firms.
So American economy
also prospered along with it. I'm sure it makes a lot of sense for me to think this way. So the only place where I see reconstruction happening is when there is absolute peace, when you're in agreement with the victor. So Iran should be in peace. Iran should have made compromises and should have reached an agreement with the Western powers, number one. More than Western powers with America, number one, for reconstruction to begin. Secondly, you shouldn't be able to afford reconstruction on your own. Only then will your neighbor help you.
Okay.
Only then will a friend come and help you. If you are already rich and prosperous,
of course, they are abundant.
You don't
oil
need,
is
you don't need financial resources. What you need is technical expertise. You need people skills. You need human resources. You need technical technology, so on. So the difference between the Palestinians and the Iranians is Palestinians are up there for reconstruction. So there is relative peace there. And so if this continues for a while, they will reach a stage where a number of these Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and the Western powers will pour money. Essentially, it will come from the three rich Arab states, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. They will reconstruct Gaza. They will rebuild Palestine. That is about probably a couple of years away or a year away from now. So that is Palestine, because the Palestinians have no means of their own. They don't have oil. They are under an occupation. There is no way that they can fund this huge project themselves, because it requires billions of dollars and it will have to come from the rich Arab states. And they might do this. That is the idea of the Board of Peace that President Trump constituted.
Yeah,
So,
this man also suggested that.
correct.
This
So
man
that
who
is
is
the
now throwing tons and tons of bomb also suggested Board of Peace.
correct. So the Board of Peace, there are 4 stages in the peace proposals between Hamas and the Israelis. So we have crossed the first stage, which is the exchange of human remains, exchange of hostages, etc.
Yes.
That happened. The second is simultaneously the Israelis should withdraw somewhat. They withdrew. The second stage is demobilization of Hamas. It hasn't happened.
Oh,
So that is the most critical stage. How anybody would demobilize them? Will the Hamas people agree to give away their weapons? We don't know.
balance weapons, balance.
And when that happens, the law and order and the day-to-day running of affairs will be given to an international police force. So far, Indonesians and I think Azerbaijanis have agreed to send their troops, their police. There will be other countries.
For Gaza.
Correct. So they will police the
They will
borders.
help
So
Gaza.
they will help bring order into Gaza. They will be in charge of
Okay.
rule of law and law and order. There will be an interim administration, etc. All that is, we have not
Worked
seen
out,
that yet.
but because of this war, it's
Correct. So that is that. After that, then comes reconstruction.
Okay.
Okay, so demobilization is the critical cog in the wheel. We'll have to wait to see.
Then
if
you
that
can
will-
go ahead with the
Iran.
Foreign policy of India.
No, I
toward-
want to say,
Ah,
I want to go to Iran for a minute.
Okay.
And then, now
Please.
Iran has oil reserves that will last for 100 years.
minimum.
Yes. Saudi oil reserves will last for 50 years. Other countries, the reserves will last for 60 years in the Gulf. Okay. Iran, its oil reserves can pay for reconstruction. So that is not what they will need. What they will need is, they will need technical expertise. They will need engineers. They will need reconstruction
And, I
people.
remember you saying in our previous dialogues, Iranians produced more number of engineers.
True. In fact,
So, if you help them a bit, they will catch up because of their native intelligence, natural intelligence.
absolutely. I mean, look, they were about to become a nuclear power.
Yes.
So imagine. However, how they did it, why they did it, it's a different question. But they were able to do that. So this is the situation with Iran. And of course, we will be one of those countries from where we will send technicians, engineers. We will send workers. We were sending workers to Israel after the conflict with Palestine.
Correct.
Okay, so there'll be a number of opportunities there for a lot of people after if there is peace and if there is agreement. So we'll have to wait there. On India's foreign policy, India is walking a very tight rope. The current government has come under fire from the opposition, especially the Congress, because they keep saying that our foreign policy is scripted by President Trump.
As many view, today Congress party is not a responsible opposition. They spend more time to settle goals. And I think they need to change their strategy, because Congress is very important to this country too. A reasonable, good opposition should be there, and the only option available for the Indian is Congress. But their current approach is more inimical than being a good opposition. That's what many feel, and that's what I express.
I wanted to go back to the India's foreign policy, how we began and where we are now. So I think our foreign policy has been rather consistent. During the Nehruvian era, we were one of the leaders of, there were two blocks, because there was a Cold War, there was a Russian bloc, there was a Soviet bloc, there was an American bloc. We took the stand that we don't want to be part of either of the blocs. We just want to be in the middle. And there were other states which towed our line. There was Egypt, under Colonel Nasser. There was Indonesia. Then there was Marshal Tito in Yugoslavia and us. So we came together and founded the non-aligned movement, NAM. So were we really in the middle, or were we slightly closer to one of the powers? We were, in my opinion, we were not entirely in the middle. We were slightly closer to the Soviet bloc. I'll tell you why. Because when the Soviets invaded Hungary in 1956, we didn't condemn it.
Okay.
We didn't condemn it. When they invaded Czechoslovakia in 1968, we didn't condemn it. In fact, we voted against all the resolutions that were put forward to condemn the Soviet invasion. So, we were not entirely in the middle. Now, why did we do this?
Who was the foreign minister at the time for India?
The Prime Minister Nehru was his own foreign minister.
Okay.
Only after he finished, then Swaran Singh, and then we had a number of other foreign ministers. Even Narasimha Rao used to be a foreign minister. Dinesh Singh, I think, was a foreign minister, and so on. The Indians were slightly, bent towards the Soviets, if you may. Why did we do that? We did that because the Pakistanis were part of the American bloc.
Okay.
There were two military alliances. There was a military alliance called SEATO. There was a military alliance called CENTO. The Pakistanis were part of this military alliance along with the Turks in one of those. We don't believe in military alliances.
Okay.
We have never been part of a military alliance. So, until 68, we managed somehow. In 1971, we were confronted with a huge issue. The issue was we wanted to go into East Pakistan and help the Mukti Baghani to liberate East Pakistan and turn it into Bangladesh. We had a humanitarian issue. We had 10 million refugees within India.
Pushing into India.
Correct. So, if there was no peace, these people, we will
We'll
have
stay
to
here, we have to
feed them, etc. So, you remember in those days,
Yes.
the government issued a stamp, a 5 paisa stamp, a refugee stamp that we all bought.
Correct.
And so we did this. At which point the Pakistanis sought American help. President Nixon was the president, and he didn't like Indira Gandhi too much.
And I think Nixon, like Trump,
Nixon was like Trump.
He changed the world order.
He did.
Because he withdrew the gold.
The gold, because it was becoming impossible to keep the gold standard alive.
He did not honor the commitment given to the Gulf countries' protection.
He recognized China. He's founded... anyway, so Nixon was not a great friend of... Richard Nixon was not a great friend of the Indians. He particularly disliked or he didn't like Indira Gandhi. You can read all his comments online. If you go to the presidential archives, and he uses not very parliamentary words. All that is there. One can visit it. So the Americans, it appeared, would intervene in Pakistan's favor. The 7th Fleet was about to be sent to the Indian Ocean. So the Indians were forced to choose sides for the first time. So in 1971, India signed a friendship treaty with the Soviets. It's called the Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty.
Okay.
Yeah, so now...
word once again comes to my memory.
Correct.
Indo-Soviet Treaty.
Correct. So we did that. And then since then, because the Soviets were very helpful in the war with Pakistan, every time there was a resolution for a ceasefire, the Indians didn't want a ceasefire. They had a military objective. Until then, they needed some time.
Okay.
The Russians vetoed all those resolutions and got time for the Indians. So we signed a treaty with them. And then since then, we have, the Americans until 1990 didn't look in our direction. So we had a pretty difficult, an awkward relationship with the Americans. Although we are both the largest democracies, we both are very open societies, we run elections, we believe in open speech, press freedom and all that. It was not meant to be. In the 1990s, in the 1980s, in the late 70s, the Russians, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. We didn't like it. We don't want the bear so close to us.
What was the objective behind Soviet invasion of Afghanistan.
They wanted to
And
turn it.
continuously after that, somebody is invading Afghanistan. Only now they have some government on their own.
The Afghan king was deposed. There was a king called Zahir Shah. He fell, and there was.
That's all fine. I'm asking,
They
was
wanted
there
it to-
any wealth available there for people to continuously spend and
No,
invading,
it
putting
was
their
next
soldiers
to
on the foot?
Tajikistan, which is the end of Soviet Union. It's the next state to Tajikistan. Today, Tajikistan is an independent country. Tajikistan shares a border with Afghanistan. The former Soviet Union ended in South Asia, in Tajikistan. So
Okay.
they didn't want trouble in their border. They wanted to control it. They wanted a friendly government there. So they
So
invaded.
Afghanistan were fighting against Russians.
No, they were not
Tajikistan.
fighting. They were not fighting. There was turmoil within Afghanistan. So they wanted to put in power, they wanted to place in power a friendly administration.
Okay, okay.
So they brought in a left-leaning.
So that any neighboring country would
Will
like to
do. So it was a neighborhood policy where they wanted a puppet, a friendly government in place. That led to the mujahideen.
Okay. But Afghanistan doesn't have big natural wealth.
No, I think they have. I'm not very aware at the moment, but in our next discussion.
Because without something there, so much dollars are spent by some invasion, particularly.
Later, the reasons for the later invasions are different. I will tell you in a moment.
Okay.
So the Soviets wanted a client state in Afghanistan, not a troubled state. We also want Bangladesh to be peaceful. We don't want it to be turbulent, because if there is turbulence, it will affect us. People will come running.
Naturally.
So similarly, the Afghans, Soviets wanted a pretty stable Afghanistan, which will listen to them.
Okay.
So they placed people in power, Barbak, Kamal. These were client people who will listen to, who took orders from Moscow. So there was a natural, organic movement against the Soviet invasion.
Okay.
Until then, the Soviet society, the Afghanistan society, was pretty open. But afterwards, it took to Islam, and in part, and the Americans have to be blamed for this, for the
Something
fact
like
that
the Shah of Iran.
Correct. For Islam taking such strong roots there. I mean, it was a pretty open society, liberal. It was an Islamic country, but not this.
It was a Hindu country too.
True.
In the past.
It was a Buddhist country.
Mahabharata says that, Buddhist country. We saw that big Buddha statue being destroyed.
And the Sikh king Ranjit Singh, he ruled parts of Afghanistan. So that explains why some of the Sikhs are still there.
Okay.
They have a few hundred Sikhs, I think. So when Afghanistan, when the Soviets, who are godless people, when they come in, the Americans, one of the things that the Americans did to help the Mujahideen, they distributed free Qurans all over Afghanistan. So it became a fight between an organic, homegrown movement against the godless Soviets, and this movement was based in Islam.
Okay.
The Mujahideen. Mujahideen simply, they overthrew the Soviet. The Soviets started bleeding. They couldn't occupy it. So it's a big country. They couldn't occupy. So after some time, they left.
Soviet got also exposed.
Correct. After they left, the Mujahideen came to power, etc. And then after the Mujahideen, the Taliban came to power. They were a more radical version of the Mujahideen.
Okay.
So when the Taliban came to power, the second invasion, why the second invasion happened by the Americans was because
of that.
the Osama bin Laden was given refuge there by the Taliban. He later moved to Pakistan.
I think USS Cole was attacked.
Correct. So,
Ship.
Correct. No, the Twin Towers.
Twin Tower later. Before that.
USS Cole. So the Americans saw they couldn't care less if the Taliban ruled Afghanistan, but they were harboring a man who was directing operations against the Americans. So they spent a lot of money. They lost about 2,400 soldiers. So it was not a very, they lost this war.
Osama bin Laden
yes.
was a monster initially nurtured by US, is that right?
I'm not very sure. But
okay. We'll go.
He was in Sudan for some time, and then from there he came to Afghanistan. It was a friendly country. We can discuss it later. So that is what happened there. We didn't condemn the Afghan invasion of the
Invasion of,
Soviets in
India
1980.
did not condemn.
No,
Okay.
in 1982, everybody else condemned. We didn't. And then Indira Gandhi tells Time magazine in the US, she says, I don't think any good will come out of condemnation.
Okay.
Okay? We have expressed our views. We are against any occupation. We are against any invasion.
Okay.
So she massages the message. So this has been our stand. So although we were close to the Soviets and we took our actions.
It's a neutral.
We condemned the American invasion, the American occupation of Vietnam. Every day, almost.
Okay.
So we did. So our policy was slightly tilted towards the Soviets until the 80s. After Indira Gandhi passed away, and then when Rajiv Gandhi took over, he firstly opened up to China because we have not, after 1962, we didn't have any relationship with China. So he was the first prime minister to visit China.
Rajiv Gandhi.
He wanted to open up. So commissions were set up to discuss the border issues because we don't have a marked border.
Correct.
The border that is marked
That is
by
why
the
still
British.
we are
Yes.
struggling.
The Chinese don't recognize the border by McMahon, who had done the. Okay, so he went, but the relationship then started to develop. After he lost power in '89, you had brief interregnums of the opposition. We had VP Singh, then we had Chandrasekhar, the first time, and then we had Narasimha Rao. When Narasimha Rao took over, India opened up its
A
economy.
bit advised by Dr. Swamiji on Chinese policies.
I see. So when they opened up, it was a completely different India. We did structural reforms, we simplified our tax laws, we brought in investment, we made it easier for foreign investors to invest. We opened up our economy. You can see what has happened because we have opened up the economy. The middle class has grown.
Yes, yes.
People have become
Undoubtedly.
prosperous.
Why the labor class have gone? Yes. I'm telling you, particularly South India and maybe the West also. The labor class standard of living has grown. I don't know whether you have had an opportunity to visit today's slum.
No.
Earlier slums, water will, during rain, water will come inside the house. They will have some plastics covered like they're suffering. But today's slum, you will find minimum one Godrej bureau,
Correct.
minimum one TV, minimum one washing machine, AC2,
Maybe a refrigerator.
and definitely dish antenna and 2 connections at least.
True.
It is all, they will wash clothes in some other house for an earning, but in their house they will have a washing machine. And so that has definitely improved. It's good for the country.
True. So we've opened up, and then in the 90s, there was extremism. Extremism was beginning to rear its head.
Okay.
So until then, and then Bill Clinton became the president of the United States. So they started looking at India for the first time. Bill Clinton set the thaw in
he set the tone for the
Indo-US
Indo-American relationship.
Absolutely. Then we opened up.
I think he was a very efficient leader, apart from the Monica Lewinsky matter, which reduced his...
It was a good time for him because those two terms that he was in, those
he
8
was
years.
handling well too. He never showed any pressure on his
It was
face.
during his time that the peace and
Arafat also...
he brought him and Ehud Barak, and he spent 10 days with them. It was the closest they could get to peace. But
he was not showing big brother attitude.
No. He was a young man, and he had a lot of dynamism, and he had a lot of energy and verve, and he used it, he put it to good use. He was the one who brokered the Dayton Accords, which brought the war in Yugoslavia to an end.
See?
So he did all that. Under Clinton, we started reciprocating American friendship, and which grew. In 1998, we exploded a nuclear device in Pokhran.
Correct. By Vajpayee.
Which brought American sanctions on us. Okay? Which we overcame under Manmohan Singh by signing an agreement called the 123 Agreement in 2008. Since then, our relationship with the Americans have been very
Improved.
close. So coming to the present, so this is the, so initially we followed a non-alignment policy, but in reality it was slightly tilted to the Soviets. Then we started from the 90s to really become equidistant. I'll tell you why. Because there was no Soviet bloc in 1990.
Yeah,
The Soviet
it got
Union had
cracked.
disappeared. So there was only one bloc. There was no need to choose any bloc. So you could be friends
One
with.
power, no two superpowers. The Cold War ended.
So there was no issue. So we started reciprocating. And then after that, today we follow a policy called strategic autonomy, that we are the masters of our own enterprise. So we
Okay,
decide.
my friend Kannan, this episode we will conclude
Okay.
that India may have to play a big role in reconstruction of Iran once the turmoil is over. We may stand to gain also, and we will also be doing what our good deeds for the Iranian people. And we will continue this discussion
Absolutely.
about the particular matter which we were discussing about the policies, definitely in our third episode in connection with Iran. Unlike all channels totally focusing on the war, going one-sided about it, our channel we will talk some sense, logics, history to speak about this Iran. Thank you very much for coming to the studios and giving our viewers a very nice information, and this is a very nice dialogue in both the episodes.
Thank you.
Thank you.